Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chat with the Cats, Financial Aid Edition, presented by Northern Michigan University. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn a little bit more about the financial aid process here at NMU. We're going to start with a general overview presentation and save time at the end for your questions. Throughout the presentation, you can enter your questions through the Q&A function, which is at the bottom of your screen. Please do not put unique or private matters in the Q&A. Rather, please reach out to the admissions office or the financial aid office after the webinar to discuss any of these situations further. If we do not answer your questions during the webinar, we will reach out individually to follow up. This webinar will be recorded, so if you are not viewing with us live, please contact admissions or financial aid with additional questions when you have a chance. So before we begin the financial aid presentation, I just want to do a little advertisement for the other Chat with the Cat series that we have going on this spring. If you want to continue learning more about your next steps to enrollment at NMU, please join us next week for our housing webinar, where we'll hear from current NMU students and housing staff about the application process for housing, roommate and room selection, and more. And we'll also have a Q&A session for that webinar to answer some of your questions. Also, the admissions office will be hosting Zoom meetings on your next steps to enrollment at NMU. Our first one is February 22nd, but if you can't make it, don't worry. We have other dates available, which you can see on the screen, where we'll be covering the same content during each of them, and we've tried offering them at different times to accommodate the different things that you're all involved in, and then the different time zones too. You can register for the housing webinar and the next steps Zoom session at nmu.edu/admission/virtual. So with that, I want to introduce Jeff, our presenter today. He comes right from the financial aid office here at NMU, and he's a financial aid counselor. So Jeff, thanks for joining us, and I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Yes, welcome everyone. As Kate said, I'm from the financial aid office, and I'll be going over quite a bit of information, and I might be going a little fast with some of it, but you will be getting copies of this presentation as well. So let me share my screen. And let's see. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is the cost of attending college. Some of you may not have thought about everything that there is when it comes to paying for going to school, the types of aid that are available, and of course, help with the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid. If you have not completed that already, hopefully you have, but if not, we have some tips on that as well. So what is the cost of going to college, or cost of attendance? Every college that you're looking at, including Northern, will have what's called an estimated cost of attendance. So when you complete your FAFSA and you send it to the schools that you asked it to go to, every school will send you their estimated cost of attendance and then your estimated aid package. And so every school has these categories for their cost of attendance. Tuition and fees, of course, is the classes, paying for the classes and any fees associated with those. Room and board is essentially your rent and your meal plan at the school. Books and supplies, that is just as it says, books and supplies. We do an average survey of students to find out what they spend on average each semester, and that's what's included there. So depending on what you need and what you're majoring in or what you're taking that semester, your books and supplies are going to vary from semester to semester. Transportation is part of that cost. However, transportation rarely, if ever, is part of your actual bill at the university. That's money that your family spends to go from where you live to the campus once or twice a semester. Or if you're a commuter student in the local area, what money you'd be spending to get back and forth every day. Miscellaneous personal expenses include anything you can think of in addition to those other items. So things for your dorm room, clothes, special equipment, special supplies that you might need that aren't regular school supplies. So all of those, the transportation, miscellaneous, and books are an average of current college student survey. And then the tuition and fees and room and board are estimates of what we believe the charges will be for next fall. As of, I believe most of you are going to be fall of 2022. And so we don't have the exact numbers for tuition or housing just yet. The Board of Trustees that runs the school sets those rates, and then we advertise them as soon as possible once they set those. And they typically set those in May or June each year for the next fall. So the numbers that we've been sending you, if you have an aid package from us already, are an estimate of what we think they might be for next fall. So they could change. Okay, so if hopefully you're coming to Northern Michigan University, here's an example of an estimated cost for coming to Northern next fall for the 22-23 school year. You can see we have three different categories: a Michigan resident, a non-Michigan resident, so if you're not obviously from Michigan, or a Michigan resident commuter, which means that you're living at home with your parents and commuting from their house each day. So essentially the big difference between Michigan and Michigan commuter is that the housing and meal portion is, obviously you're not paying us for that. So, but these are the numbers. These are annual numbers, meaning that at Northern we have a fall and a winter semester. We also have summer sessions, but those are typically handled separately. So the fall and winter, you would split all of these numbers in half for the fall, half for the winter. So the 12,476 would get split in half, only paying half of that for the fall, and then you'll be billed that typically in August, and then the other half is billed for the winter and typically in January. Housing and meals is based on the standard housing and the gold meal plan. So when you're looking through the housing options and the meal plan options, just know that if you choose anything more than the standard housing or the gold meal plan, your price may be higher. So you want to keep that in mind depending on your scholarships or the funding that you have. And then, like we said before, the books, transportation, and other are an average for students. So your total cost, estimated cost, not your bill, because your bill is going to depend on your housing choice, your meal plan choice, the courses you take, and if there are any special fees with them. So until you go through all of that, we won't know your exact bill. But this is an average of what a person may typically expect to pay if they're coming from Michigan or not from Michigan, the 27 or the 32,000 numbers for next year. That's what we know for now. In addition, there are some other fees not included in these big numbers that might be in addition to what you're charged over here. And those are on the side here. We have what's called the student athletic fee, a student rec pass, a green fund fee, parking pass if you bring a car to campus. So all of those things can add to your total bill. But the rec pass and the parking pass, or the rec pass, sorry, and the green fund fee can be opted out of if you don't want to use those. The student athletic fee is there the first time you come to school, but it's good for 6 years, so you only pay it the one time. And then the parking pass is required if you bring a car to campus. If you don't bring a car, you don't have to get a parking pass, obviously. Then some of your classes will, like art or science or music, you may have special supplies or fees associated with those. So those get added to the cost over here. And now, one of the biggest ways that students pay for their bill at the university is through the federal government, and that's called the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, or FAFSA. Remember, the first F stands for free, which means don't pay. So if you're ever on a website thinking it's the FAFSA and they ask you for money, you're on the wrong site. So it's fafsa.gov or studentaid.gov, either way, it'll bring you to the FAFSA website. There are different methods of filling out the FAFSA if you haven't done already. The most common is FAFSA on the web. Essentially, you go to their website and fill it out there. But if you're living in your phone, you can do the My Student Aid mobile app, and everything that you can do on the computer, you can do on that app. So if you want to do it all on your phone, you're able to do it that way. They started that a couple of years ago. Also, there is paper forms, but I don't recommend that unless there's a really special circumstance. So I would recommend that you do either FAFSA on the web or the mobile app. The application process every fall after October 1st. So you guys are seniors. So this past October 1st, the FAFSA for 22-23 became available. It's always tied to your school year. So because you're coming 22-23 school year next year, that's the FAFSA you want to complete to help cover that. So October 1st. So this coming fall, you'll do the one for the next year. Every year you have to do it again for the following year. So it's not just a one-time deal. In Michigan, if you're from Michigan, we prefer that you do it by March 1st if possible, because there's a scholarship in Michigan called the Michigan Competitive Scholarship, which is linked to having your FAFSA done and submitted, or at least submitted by March 1st. And having a 1200 on your SAT score. So if you have questions about that, we can discuss that later. Now, studentaid.gov is where the FAFSA lives. It's also where you would do any federal loan requirements that you might have if you're going to borrow the loans that will be offered to you. You will be offered loans, you don't have to take them, but if you do, there are a couple of requirements, and those are also at studentaid.gov. Remember, it's free if you haven't decided yet, but hopefully you're going to put Northern first on your FAFSA form. You can put up to 10 schools, but we recommend that you put the most likely school first. And then it goes to the government for about 3 to 5 days. And then at that point, they finalize processing it there, and then they send it out to the schools that you list. So then it goes through the computer to the schools. The schools then review it on our end. And then once we've completed that process, we send you what's called an award package notification. And that's when you kind of see what Northern or any of the other schools you put down will be willing to offer you based on your FAFSA results. And then you look at our estimated cost and you kind of see how it's going there. Usually when you hit submit on the FAFSA, it takes 2 to 3 weeks is a good rule for the school having any information for you. So, you know, if you haven't done your FAFSA yet, once you do your FAFSA, wait about 2 to 3 weeks before contacting the schools that you put down, before asking for some results if they haven't sent it to you already. We ask that it's a good idea for you to keep any information together, maybe start a college folder or a financial aid folder, because you will have to refer to it from every fall when you do your FAFSA again. So it might be a good idea to keep everything together. And then you may, the school that you apply to may ask for more information to finalize your FAFSA. They may not, but they might. So once you hit submit on the FAFSA, doesn't mean you're done. You want to keep on top of it until you know for certain that your award is in place. Now, in order to go online, FAFSA on the web at studentaid.gov, you do have to log in with a username and password, which they call the Federal Student Aid or FSA ID. It's a username and password. And the student needs to create one, and then at least one of the parents on the FAFSA needs to create one as well for themselves, because the FSA ID is linking you to the federal government with your social security number, your date of birth, and your email. And so it has to be individual, and it should be set up by the person who owns those numbers or those emails, okay? So, and if you're a high school student, please do not use your high school email, because the point of the email is to help you in the future to reset your passwords and stuff if you need to. And if you have a high school one, that might get cut off when you graduate. So once you create those, please save them somewhere that you have access to, because again, every fall after October 1st, you're going to need them again to reapply for the next year. So keep them somewhere. If you're someone that saves all your notes in your phone, please also save it somewhere else. That's great if you want it convenient in your phone, but in case something, heaven forbid, happens to your phone, please save it somewhere else. So in case something does happen. We had one student one time who jumped off some rocks into Lake Superior and forgot his phone was in his pocket. And it went to the bottom, never to be found again. So with all his notes, so he was freaking out. So please save it somewhere else as well. And again, here's the website to go, but you can go to studentaid.gov. That's where everything is. That's where the FAFSA is. That's where you would go to set up your usernames and passwords. So everything happens there for federal stuff. Now, when you part of the FAFSA, there's a parent section, a student section, and a parent section. And part of it is reporting your federal income taxes. If you're doing the 22-23 FAFSA, they're going to want the 2020 federal taxes, which are the ones you did last April. If you did not file taxes, there's an option to choose that. But if you did file taxes, there's a thing called the IRS data retrieval tool. And most people can use this. Parents, if you're married, filed jointly as a tax status, you can use it. Or if you're head of household or single, you can use it. But if you are married, filed separately, you cannot. If that's your case, married, filed separately, you'll have to take both parents' taxes and do it manually. The blank on the form will tell you what line to take from your taxes. But if you can use the IRS data retrieval tool, it saves a lot of time and grief and fills in a lot of answers for you. So essentially you hit a button and then it brings you to the IRS, you find your taxes, you hit a button there, it brings you back to the FAFSA and answers most of the questions. There will be a couple of questions that will ask once you get back there, so you'll have to know those answers as well. But most will be answered by doing this. So I do recommend the IRS data retrieval tool. Information on the FAFSA is essentially students, you're going to have to fill in your name, your address, your email, your birthday, your high school, your college plans, like do you want a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, those sorts of things. But it also asks for parent and student income and assets, meaning like savings accounts and any real estate that you own besides the house that you live in, that sort of stuff. The household information they'll need as well. So what that is essentially if you have 2 parents in your house, then it's 2 parents and you as the student, so that's 3. And then any other people that the parents are supporting, whether it's your siblings or if it's maybe their parents, your grandparents living there. So depending on, so read the questions, but you want to include everyone in the household that you should. And then it'll ask how many of those people will be in college as well in the fall of 2022. The general eligibility for filling out the FAFSA, you have to be a US citizen or eligible non-citizen, and you have to have a valid social security number or alien registration number. And then also if you were born male, they're going to ask you that question. It's not required this year, starting this year, but they're going to ask you anyway, so it will be required for you to finish the form, unfortunately. So if you were born male, you answer yes or no if you've registered with Selective Service. And then if it's no, then it should come up and say, do you want us to register you? And then you can go from there. So, but you also, since you're a high school senior, you will have to complete your high school, whether it's homeschool transcript, a GED, or diploma. So come June, hopefully everybody will have one of those, and then be enrolled or accepted at a school such as Northern Michigan University. Now, some of you might say, well, my parents aren't together anymore, so which parents am I reporting? Or I only have one parent, or how does that work? And so here's a little chart, but essentially if the 2 biological parents are no longer in the same household, you would report the household that you've lived in the most in the past 12 months. So if that is equal to the other parents, which rarely it is, but if it is, then it's the parent that supports you the most financially. And if that's equal, then it's the parent whose medical or health insurance you're on. And then there's even more dissection from there, but usually you can get an answer that way. So say you choose mom's household, but maybe mom is remarried, then you would have to include mom and step parent. Okay, so it's not just mom if she's remarried. So if you have questions about who to report, you can contact us or the financial aid office, at the school you're going to. So hopefully here, and we can walk you through that step of who you're reporting. Frequent errors that happen on the FAFSA, household size and number, if people don't report everyone they're supposed to. Child support paid or received will be asked. A big one that happens is that parents, like in that scenario we talked about, if mom thinks, well, I'm divorced from the biological father of this student, so I'm going to put that I'm divorced, but then they're actually remarried to someone else. So putting divorced is an incorrect answer. They should have said married/remarried. So those are common errors. Also, you don't report the value of the house that you live in. Or if you do have real estate, like a camp or a cottage, or real estate, like maybe your parents own another house that they rent out to other people, you would have to report the value of those things minus the debt that they still owe on them. If you have questions about that, you can contact us and we can walk you through that. Also, under parents' asset, if there's a 529 college savings plan, if there's one for this student coming in the fall, if it's in the parent's name or the student's name, it's listed as a parent asset. If it's in grandma's name or Uncle Joe's name and not in the parent's name or the student's name, then it's not necessarily reported on this FAFSA. It may get reported in the future once it's used, but right now it's not reported as an asset unless it's in the parent or student name. But do not include the value of your retirement, of your primary residence, or the value of your business unless you have 100 full-time employees or more, which most people don't when you have a private business, but maybe. So don't report the value of those things, and value of life insurance as well is not included. After you file your FAFSA, students, if you put down an email, you get an electronic email of your SAR or SAR, student aid report. And that essentially is a summary of all your answers that you put down on the FAFSA. And you want to look through that carefully, especially if you manually entered tax numbers, because if you added an extra zero or you transpose numbers or something like that, that could mean that the government thinks you have more than you do. So you will want to check that carefully. If you did not put down an email, then you would get it postally in the mail, the actual mail. And schools, like I said, after you file the FAFSA, schools may ask for more information if the government requires us to ask for more, but we're going to ask for more to finalize your FAFSA before we can pay any of it out. So you want to stay in communication with the financial aid office here once you submit. Once you submit the form itself is meant to find out what kind of financial need you have as a family based on what you reported. And the government currently calls it an expected family contribution. It's a number that they spit out once you hit submit. So it's going to spin all that information you put down, family size and income and, savings accounts, that kind of stuff, and spit out a number. The lower that number is, the more financial need you have. If it goes as low as zero currently, but zero does not mean you're expected to pay zero to go to school. It just means that you have high financial need, okay? And then that will dictate what kind of federal financial aid they're willing to offer you. So they are thankfully going to be renaming that to something like a student need index or something more in line with what it actually is, because expected contribution makes people think that they're expected to contribute that much money when in fact that is incorrect. Okay. Verification. So every year when you hit submit on the FAFSA, it goes to the government for about 3 to 5 days before it goes to your school. If during that time they're reviewing it before they send it to the school, they randomly choose students for what's called verification or an audit, which means that when it goes to the school you want, the school will have to verify what you said on the FAFSA is accurate. So we may have to ask for certain things to finalize your FAFSA if you are chosen for verification. You may not be, because it's randomly chosen out of millions of college students every year, so you may not be chosen. But if you are, that's when you want to communicate with the financial aid office, because like I said earlier, you can't get your financial aid until we finalize your FAFSA. Important reminders, just remember that financial aid was never meant to cover 100% of your bill unless you get a whole bunch of scholarships. So please know that there will be some sort of out-of-pocket cost to you. But you want to take advantage of every free scholarship search, payment plans at the school that you're going to. Northern has a couple of those in our Student Service Center that help you break it up over the semester. alternative loans, savings accounts, part-time jobs, everything you can think of to get some money together to help pay for your balance. You want to try to do that. And then for maximum consideration for certain things, there are timelines and requirements to do, whether it's community service, essays, forms to fill out, all of those things, and deadlines. So you want to pay attention to all of that in order to get the money, most hopefully of which will be free money that you don't have to pay back. Again, every October 1st, the next one's available. Don't stress about October 1st, that's when it's available. But so I usually tell families, you get a week off typically for Thanksgiving, carve out a week, or pardon the pun, but carve out a week, a day or so, an hour to meet with your parents and do your FAFSA during Thanksgiving break. And then if school is contacting you for things, respond to that in a timely manner so we can get your stuff in order for you. There's a lot of free help out there, but you do have to ask. Also, you will be offered federal student loans once you complete the FAFSA. You do not have to accept them. And if you don't need them, a loan is a loan, which means you have to pay it back. So we would recommend that you decline or reduce it if you don't need it. And then there is a thing. So students, if your parents are used to, or if you're used to them helping you out with all of any issues that might come up, either with your financial aid or your bill, at Northern, it's called the Release of Information Form, and that's part of FERPA, which is the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. So it's a federal act to protect the privacy of the student. So once you're here on campus, if you have any issues, you're expected to work with those yourself. But if you want somebody else to help you with it, you can fill out a release of information form. And that's something that has to be done here at Northern every year. It expires August 31st every year. You fill that out, and then those folks that you put down on there, whether it's grandma or your parents or whoever, they can call or stop in on your behalf and get some stuff taken care of. But if you don't fill it out, we can't communicate with them and give them general information and have them ask you to call us. So that's your call. Types of financial aid. Grants and scholarships are the best kind, of course, to have. And those are the type of money type of aid that you don't have to pay back. And then self-help aid, which is work through federal work study, or loans, which is money that you would borrow to help pay for things, but then you would have to pay that back later after you're done with school. Private sources, hopefully you've been doing that this year at high school as a senior. Those are the private scholarships that hopefully you've been looking at. Everywhere under the sun you want to look. So your houses of worship, charitable groups, Lions Club, VFW, American Legion, businesses in your town, any of that stuff. And hopefully your guidance office at your high school has been giving you resources to work on those. Those have deadlines, so you want to work on those as soon as possible. And then once you receive those in your award ceremonies and stuff, you want to let us know, and we'll add it to your award package as private scholarships. And so then when the checks arrive, we can link them up to your account. Scholarship searches, here's a couple websites. College Board is the SAT folks. And then another one here. So you want to look through as many places as you can. Even when you graduate high school, there will be scholarship opportunities. It's not just while you're there, but the bulk of them are seniors in high school. So you want to work on those as much as possible. Now, there are a lot of free sources out there, so don't ever pay a fee if you go out there for a scholarship search. And the other thing is, I've never heard of a private scholarship that needs your social security number. The FAFSA needs it, the FSA ID needs it, Northern will need it to link your FAFSA up. The state of Michigan will need it. But I've never heard of a private one. So that could be identity theft. You want to be careful with that for private scholarships. Colleges and universities, Northern's admissions office is great about offering you guys some help there based on your high school GPAs. And so where you fall with your final high school transcript. So when you graduate this spring, you'll want to make sure that Northern gets your final high school transcript that says you actually graduated in your final GPA. because if you're already accepted and you've say maybe are at the $2,000 limit for your merit award, and then your final transcript comes through, maybe you'll move up to the 2,500 or 3,000 or whatever when your final GPA is calculated. So you want to make sure that that gets to the college admissions office as soon as you graduate. Here's an example. If you're a Michigan student on the left-hand side of the screen and the non-Michigan students on the right-hand side. So here's that GPA that we were talking about. So if you've already applied and say as a non-Michigan person, you're at a 3.2, 5,600, but then you work really hard and when you graduate, you're at a 3.5, they'll change it to a 6,600. Okay, so that's kind of how that works. So you want to not get senioritis now and have your grades go down, because the reverse could happen too. Because if you drop to a 2.9, then you don't get your 5,600. All right, so work on that and make sure you turn that in after you graduate. Now, once you are a student here, Northern has what's called the NMU Foundation Scholarships. Every year, we have over 400 scholarships that are out there for NMU students. We will email you and poster you to death and advertisements all over campus during the date range. It's typically the end of January. Like this year, it's going on right now, the end of January until February 21st. And for new incoming freshmen like you guys, there are only about 10 or so of those that are for those folks. Most of them are for the current college students. So next year in January, you'll be getting emails to go into your NMU account and apply for those, but you can apply for a few of them now. So if you haven't done that yet or looked yet, it's in your NMU account under the newly admitted students. You can click on your admitted to NMU tab and it should be in there somewhere. If you have questions, you can contact our office and we can help you with that. If you do receive one of those would be for next fall, the fall of 22. Federal government, we kind of talked about that with the FAFSA. That's the biggest thing that the federal government does for you guys. Federal grants, when you apply for all of these things are what you're applying for when you fill out the FAFSA. So the federal Pell Grant is need-based. So that means, remember that EFC number, the lower that number is, the more need you have. So if your number is low enough, that's when you qualify for these grants from the government. Grants are money you do not pay back. Federal work study is also need-based. So there'll be a question on the FAFSA that says, are you interested in federal work study? And you can say yes, no, don't know, or leave it blank. I recommend you always say yes, but it doesn't mean that you have to work when you get here, but it is a type of aid that does run out. So if you don't say yes right away, you will not be awarded it, even if you qualify. And then if you ask for it later, it could be all used up. So always say yes, doesn't mean you have to work. You can always decline it later. But work study is helping you find a job here on campus, which could be really great. You know, working in the department that you're majoring in, or something that would really build your resume when you're done with school and you only got it because you were a student here and you had federal work study. So we can talk about that more later if you have questions. Federal student loans are also applied for when you fill out the FAFSA. You'll be offered, and at Northern, when you receive your award package, your loans will be in offered status. So they do not become actual loans until you go into your NMU account and accept them, or you can decline them as well if you don't need them in the same place. But if you want to accept them, then we will further process them, and then you'll have 2 federal loan requirements you'll have to complete the first time you borrow, and then they will actually help to pay your bill. So as a freshman coming in, the most you can get for the whole year is $5,500. Sophomore, $6,500. Junior, senior, whoops, $7,500. There we go, sorry. So that's for the whole year, which gets split in half. So that $5,500 becomes $2,750 fall, $2,750 winter to help with your aid. The federal government sets interest rates every spring or typically early summer. So we don't know the exact interest rates for next fall yet, fall of 22. The ones for this year, it's 3.73% and it's fixed. Now, there are private loans that students can take out, and also loans that parents can take out called the Parent Plus loan. That's currently at 6.28%. That's the PLUS loan is a loan that parents would have to apply for at studentaid.gov. And then that would come in to help pay for the bill, but it would become the parent's loan because it is a parent applying for that. So, but we can talk about that more in detail later as well, if you have questions. But remember, these interest rates are for this current year. They may go up or down depending on Congress. US Congress sets those typically in June or so for next fall. State of Michigan or states. So if you're not coming from Michigan, you may want to ask if your state has any scholarships that you can use outside of Michigan, outside of your state if you're coming to Northern Michigan. But if you're coming from Michigan, the state of Michigan has a bunch of financial aid to help students as well. And typically you would have to have a FAFSA on file to receive any Michigan types of aid. That started a couple of years ago where they're now required to have a FAFSA done. So state grants and scholarships, sorry, out of Michigan people, but this is the Michigan section. There's a couple programs here that Michigan Competitive Scholarships is tied to your SAT score. And then there's a grant program called TIP that you have to have certain requirements for that. So you can talk to our office and we can walk you through those steps. Now, in addition to funding from the state, there are other types of aid, because the point of financial aid is to take all the different pieces, combine them together to help pay your bill. So there's the federal piece, the state piece, and now there's an institutional piece. Part of the institutional piece is the merit scholarships from admissions. Institution means the school that you're going to, so money from them. So there's the athletic, academic. So if you want to be on one of our sports team, you can get athletic aid possibly. Not everyone on this team gets aid, but quite a few do. So there's something there if you're going to be an athlete. I know our music department has different scholarships, so you want to check other places for institutional aid. And then if you happen to be Native American descent, especially from Michigan, but not necessarily from Michigan. In Michigan, we have the Michigan Indian Tuition Waiver if you're 25% or more. But then also any tribe outside of Michigan that is federally recognized, typically we can process aid for you as well. So you can contact our office and we can help you with that information if you're not sure. Okay, then there's reevaluation. So what this means is that parents, especially if this is your first time filling out a FAFSA for your student, you might be saying, well, my student's coming in the fall of 2022, but you're asking for my 2020 income. And since 2020, I've had job loss or reduction. There's been maybe a split in the family or excessive medical bills or something. So the income that's reported from 2020 is not accurate for 2022. So if there's a situation that has changed in your household, you can contact our office. Don't make any changes on your FAFSA because the FAFSA needs what the FAFSA needs, which is essentially the 2020 numbers, okay, what it's asking for. And so you would contact our office. We would provide you with a form that you fill out and a bullet point of materials we would need from you in order to do a reevaluation, which would be a more accurate reflection of the financial power of your household at this point. So, and then we would readjust the FAFSA, and then that could result in more financial aid or better types of financial aid. So if you think you fall into that category, once you've submitted your FAFSA and Northern has it, and we have it awarded based on your 2020 numbers, then you can contact us and ask for what's called a reevaluation. Okay. Now, our office is open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and please remember that we are Eastern Standard Time. So obviously right now, so it's an hour earlier if you're in Wisconsin or Minnesota, or 2 hours earlier if you're in California, or sorry, in Colorado, and 3 hours earlier if you're in California. So just keep that in mind. We're open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then here is our website and our email. If you do email us, please include your full name and your NMU IN number, which is that 8-digit number that starts with 2 zeros. Okay, I told you at the beginning I was going to go fast. So if I went too fast, I apologize, but we have time now, I think, for questions. And also, I believe the admissions office will be sending this PowerPoint out to you as well after this event.
Yeah, and actually, Jeff, if you want to keep that screen up, just so everyone can copy some things down while we go through the Q&A. We did get some questions here that we saved for you.
Okay, great.
Someone wanted to know, what does expected contribution means? Like, what does that entail? And can you explain what that is?
Sure. So let's see. I guess I'll leave that up. I was going to go back to that slide, but that's okay. So every year when you complete your FAFSA, it's the federal government, U.S. Congress came up with this formula. Essentially, it's they take all the information that you put in your FAFSA, so your parent income, your student income, your savings accounts, your family size, your number in college, several other things. They spin it all through the equation they came up with. And when you hit submit, it comes up and says your expected family contribution is, and it gives you this number. So the number, even though it says expected contribution, is not a dollar amount. It's a federal term that does not mean what it says. So that's why, thankfully, in the next year or so, they're going to change the name to something that means more of what it is, which is a student need index. The federal government is trying to figure out what kind of financial need you have as a family based on what you reported. And so when you get that number gets placed on a chart in Washington, and a certain area of the chart gets certain types of aid. If it's low enough, that's when you would get federal Pell Grants, federal work study, money that you don't have to pay back. If it's too high, that's when you would only be offered the federal student loans. Because you could have $1 million and still be offered the federal loans. So I don't know, did that help? I'm not sure exactly.
I think it did. We'll see if they pop in another question in the Q&A.
If that didn't, please email the admissions office and we'll get back to you with maybe a little bit more detail.
Kind of on the subject of loans and all of that. So if someone is using a federal loan and they also now they want to apply for a private loan, we're getting some questions about private loans. How does that work? And how do you know what's reputable? If you have any advice on that.
Sure. Okay. So obviously, well, not obviously, maybe not obviously, but we recommend that you always use your FAFSA loans first, your federal government loans first. Like I said, we had that chart with, a freshman only gets $5,500, which when you look at, $27,000 for the year, that's, not covering a lot. So if you did want to do a private student loan, on our website, we have a section called Sources of Aid. And so if you go to the financial aid website and then under Sources of Aid, there's a section called Alternative Loans, and it talks more about private alternative loans. And there's a link to a bunch of different companies that current NMU students are using that we have not heard any complaints from the students or any issues. Haven't heard any of that yet. So, and our loan officer monitors that quite frequently, and so and updates things. So we do have a loan officer here in our financial aid office, and they they can answer. They would be the ones that would process those loans for the students. But essentially, a private student loan, say as an example, Discover or Sallie Mae are two companies, and so you look and see. You go to the webpage, see who's maybe giving you a better interest rate. They will ask the student probably for what's called a co-signer. Normally it's a parent, but it doesn't have to be. But they would check the interest, or not the interest, but the credit score of the co-signer and the student. And they kind of come up with an interest rate for the student. And then you kind of decide who's giving you maybe the better deal if you're comparing places. There are two different interest rates. Fixed, which means it never changes for the life of that loan, or variable, which could start low but could change through the life of the loan. So you want to be careful of what you're doing. So I guess I would direct them to our alternative loan site on our website. And then if they have further questions from there, they can contact our office and ask for the loan officer, and they can kind of because it's kind of an individual subjective thing.
Yeah, great. That's good advice. Everyone, please, you do have time to pop some more questions in the Q&A. Before we wrap up here, we do have another question. Jeff, if you could answer it just briefly, if you could just talk about maybe some payment plan options. I know we have a website and all that dedicated to it, but if you could just briefly go over what that might look like.
Sure. So just for the scenario, say you're typically a student would come here in June or July for what's called orientation. During orientation, they're going to sign up for all their classes, get their schedule done, and then by then they'll have their housing and meal plan done. And then about the third week, again, this is typical, but if COVID happens or we have to change dates, but about the third week of July, the Student Service Center, which is across the hall from us, it's essentially our billing office, they will create the bill for that student at that point based on the classes they're taking, any fees associated with that, their meal plan, their housing choice, all of that. And then there's a total for the semester. They only bill per semester. They don't bill for the whole year. So in July, they'll come up with your fall charges based on what you signed up for. And then at the same time, they will take all of your financial aid, the private scholarships you tell us about, the FAFSA, any state aid, all of that stuff. They split it in half. There's a fall piece and a winter piece. The fall piece will eat away at your charges for fall first. What's left, because it probably won't be enough to cover the whole thing, what's left is due typically the second week of August. They'll give you a due date. And then if you can't pay what's left by that due date, you can contact the Student Service Center or go into your e-bill. There's an e-bill section, electronic bill section of your NMU account, and you can get into a payment plan. There are two payment plans currently. One is a deferment plan, which means it delays, say it was August 11th it was due, it would delay it to September 11th. And then, but the more common one that folks choose is the easy pay plan, which splits things 4 ways over the whole semester. So say it was for easy money, it was easy math, it was $800 left. You'd pay $200 August, $200 September, $200 October, $200 November, and then you pay it off as you go. There is no interest on your bill while it's in not being paid yet. However, if you do miss a payment, sometimes they'll add a late fee. But what happens is the payment plan will lock in the classes, lock in the housing, because if you don't get into a payment plan or pay your bill on time, within a few days, they will start purging your classes, dropping you from the classes. And then eventually they'll ask you to leave the dorm for non-payment, depending on what it is. But if you get into a payment plan, that locks everything in. Even if you miss the first payment, you're still locked in. They'll just add a late fee. So the payment plan essentially is an agreement between you and the school saying that you intend to pay it, you just can't right now. And so you need some help with spreading it out. I don't know, did that help?
I think so.
Okay. But essentially there are 2 right now, and it's the Student Service Center who handles those. And there's more information. If you have your NMU account set up, it's under the e-bill section, but you might not have access to that yet because you don't have an e-bill yet. Because I think you don't have access to that, I don't think, until you complete orientation. But I could be wrong on that. But that's not our area. So.
Yep, you will, once everyone completes orientation during the summer, you will have access to more on your NMU account. I think, I know we went through all of this very fast and furious, and I know Jeff mentioned this a few times, but just know if you have any questions about financial aid or anything else, there's a lot of people here at Northern who are willing to help. And we know that this webinar is not the one-stop shop for everyone. You can feel free to reach out to us. And we know that this might just generate even more questions, but now you can put some names with faces and know that we're here to help. So thank you, Jeff, for this presentation. I'm going to share my screen here just to pop up some more of the admissions information here. Again, if we didn't get to your questions in the Q&A, I just know that we will be following up with you individually. And of course, I had mentioned you can reach out to us. Before we exit today, I am just going to put this information back up so everyone can see it. If you would like to talk to financial aid, Jeff or anyone else there, we have their number, their email. They're happy to talk through anything. If you want to talk to more people at Northern, we do have an in-person visit program where you can meet with financial aid, have an academic appointment, have an admissions appointment. But we all know that you're all scattered, and you know, maybe you just want a quick appointment and you can't make a trip up here. We do have a pretty robust virtual visit program. So we can actually schedule Zoom meetings. So one-on-one Zoom meetings with financial aid or admissions or an area that you're interested in studying, or like the honors program. So just know that that option is out there virtually. Certainly we'd love to have you on campus in person, but we know, you know, if you're driving, most of our students are coming from 6+ hours away from campus. So we are happy to do one-on-one virtual appointments, and we can set that up in our office as well. Also, don't forget about our Chat with the Cats, the housing edition next Tuesday, and our Chat with the Cats, your NMU to do. For more details on your next steps to becoming an NMU student, you can register for these virtual sessions here at nmu.edu/admissions/virtual. I'll also be sending out a few email invites, so keep an eye out in your inbox for those reminders. And again, this financial aid webinar will be available in a few days on this virtual page, the nmu.edu/admissions/virtual, for later viewing. So you'll, and we'll also make sure you can receive the PowerPoint from today as well. Jeff did go through that information very quickly, but you can access, if you want to remember anything that he said, you can access that later. So thank you again, everyone, for participating, and please let us know how we can help with your next steps at NMU. Thanks. Have a good night.